coming to you live from the Press Box Overtime Digital Stereo, hosted by Restream. Tonight's the first show for the fall season. Usually we get cranked up here during the fall because for whatever reason, even though we all love all sports, football just kind of seems to get our interest and pique our conversations. So this is my first show for the fall. I'm proud to have my good buddy Doug Cook, past administrator for Brevard Public Schools, spent a lot of years at Satellite High School, used to be the head football coach back in the late 80s at my alma mater, Cocoa High School. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on my good friend Doug. Mr. Cook,
hey,
how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm
doing great. How about yourself?
Good.
Good to see you. It's been a while.
You hit the golf ball a little bit today?
Yeah, I'm hitting it pretty good. I tell you, I played Patrick today. I played Bella Kalina last Sunday. That's a top-notch course, man. It's way out of my league, but I got invited over there and really had a great time.
Well, good. You know, it reminds me, my dad didn't pick up the game until he was in his 60s. And we used to play at the old Sam Snead 9-hole, 18-hole par 3 up there in Cocoa. And I remember one time somebody said, "How you hitting them?" And his response was, "Often." And I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling.
I get my money's worth too.
So tonight we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about the NCAA transfer portal, going to talk about name, image, and likeness. Also, we're going to talk about super conferences and is there really such a thing as regional anymore? And for that discussion, I got a very special guest tonight, good friend of mine. If you know anything about sports here in Brevard, Cape Coast Conference, you've heard this young man's name. He's now working as the athletic director at Ridgeview High School up in Clay County. And again, good friend, glad he could join us. Please help me welcome Mr. Chris Gallagher.
Thank you, Bill. Glad to be here.
So, Chris, you going back to school tomorrow just like Brevard County?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 26 years in education. Tomorrow's the big day. Really excited. My daughter's going to be a senior at Fleming Island High School. Good. She's still nervous on that first day of school. And then my youngest daughter, 14, she's going into her freshman year at Fleming Island High School. So my wife just told me as she walked out the door, they're doing a practice run, driving to the parking lot, parking before the big day tomorrow. And she says, "I don't know what's harder, dropping them off at daycare or this."
Yeah, geez. You know, and Doug's laughing. His last one left high school last year. And I can remember when my kids were younger, I was real nervous about them driving for the first time, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, when Ethan, my oldest, got his driver's license, and my wife one day said, "Hey, run up to Publixville and get something." And all of a sudden, Ethan is, "Hey, I can do it." And I'm like, "Yes, you can." Yeah. so it's good to see that. So, Chris, before we get started, remind us how many years you were at Viera and how long have you been up there at Ridgeview?
So this is my third year at Ridgeview High School after a short one-year stint in Michigan where COVID hit and shut everything down. We came back to Florida, had a great opportunity to take over for John Scromolo, who's doing great things as the county athletic director. Ridgeview High School, Orange Park, Florida. It used to be a middle school, junior high in the 90s. And then with the growth in 1998, they turned it into a high school. So it's going on about its 24th, 25th year now.
Wow. So talk to us a little bit. And how many years were you the athletic director at Viera High School?
So in total, I was at Viera High School from the opening 13 years. I was 8 years as the athletic director, took over in 2011 before leaving in 2019. Great experience there. Of course, you know, the programs grew and tremendous success, you know, took off as the community grew. And we were just very fortunate there to have a great experience.
Very good. Any major differences as far as responsibilities, county athletic director for high school in Clay County compared to Brevard?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, for the most part, you're the principal of athletics, and they really let you be that here in Clay County. There's no question about it. They've got a great history across the board. They're growing. It's the fastest growing county the next 5 years in Florida, from what I understand, or at least that's how they're selling it up here.
Right.
But for the most part, supervision, transportation, program development,
Good.
scheduling, all those things that go into play in the athletic budget. We've got our hands full, as you know. Athletic directors never have a slow time.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I was going to ask another question. I'm trying to think of what it is. Any different sports than what we have here? I know there's other sports that the FHSAA has that Brevard doesn't have. Anything that you have up there we didn't have here?
Good question. So we don't have lacrosse or bowling, but we do have girls and boys weightlifting and girls flag football. So that's a whole different exciting event that takes place, and we've had a lot of success with those sports as well. Great opportunities, definitely sports that should be considered by all counties if they can handle it.
Right. And I know Doug and we've talked about this before, and I think you were here in Brevard when it came up, talking about adding different sports. I love girls flag football. They just started it when I left South Florida, I think in 2001, when we moved back up to Brevard. And I know in some of the conversations that we've had at the AD meetings, we were looking to add sports. The biggest concern was, well, if we add girls flag football, we might have a lot of track females move over to that sport, which will diminish our track teams and not really add any females to the overall athletic picture. Any concern about that, or have you noticed anything about that?
And I always heard that concern, but I didn't see it. I have not seen it in the 2 years previously, and I don't anticipate seeing that in the future. I think, for the most part, kids find a way.
Right.
They find ways, and we've got a lot of multi-sport athletes. So, kids are coming off of basketball, they're going into flag football. They're looking for something to do, and we just offer those opportunities. Our track program was probably close to the 100 number.
Right.
With that being said, you still got a flag football team that's very competitive with 18 girls.
Wow, amazing. And Doug, remind me, with Haley, one of your daughters, let me think here, volleyball, soccer, and lacrosse. And I believe when my daughter attended satellite and played multiple sports, if one sport was in the postseason, the other sport, the coaches kind of knew that, let them finish the postseason before. I mean, they all kind of work together for kids like your daughter and mine that played multiple sports that might have crossed over a little bit. Can you hear me, Doug? Hey, even ESPN has technical difficulties. Doug, can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got a low volume here. I had an incoming call from President Trump, and my volume's right now. I'm trying to figure out how to turn it up.
He wasn't having you pick up a server or anything at the house, was he? I was just curious if.
Stand by.
So what I was asking you, with Haley playing 3 different sports, and a lot of them crossed over from, I think, volleyball, soccer, lacrosse. Most of the coaches at Satellite, like other schools, they worked with each other as far as those kids that maybe might miss a little bit of one sport to finish another. Is he still working there? I guess Trump is still on the phone. So, Doug, let me know when you can hear me. All right. So we're going to go to our first. Looks like he's going to change. So right now it's going to be. I'm going to take him out, and then when I see him pop back, I'm going to bring him over here. So let's talk a little bit about transfer portal. Real quick, as far as high schools, Chris, Clay County, I guess we're all pretty much the same because it's by state statute and FHSAA, even though districts can supersede an FHSA rule if they make it more stringent, not more loose. Pretty much the same thing in Clay County as far as going through a process, changing schools, anything more stringent as far as making anybody sit out or anything?
I haven't really seen any kids sitting out. There was an instance last year where an individual transferred from across the river, St. John's River, wanting to play for a very competitive basketball program over here. And about halfway through the season, some issues developed there. But for the most part, I think the school district's done a great job of monitoring it, policing it a little bit, I guess you could say, where, kids are talking. They want to go to the next best thing, or, the guaranteed W.
Right.
But in the end, from just this past summer, I've seen it. The doors have been shut because schools are at capacity.
Okay, right. And that's one of the things that we have. And Doug, you coached football in the late 80s as Cocoa High School. And again, I went to school a decade before that. Did you really have, I don't know if we even had any rules in place for transfers, but back then, we had less high schools. As a head football coach, any kids changing over the summer? Or is that really not a big thing 25, 30 years ago? All right, so you can hear me, but now I can't hear you.
When that computer took the little fall.
All right, I think we're good. So any concerns with students transferring back when you coached in the late 80s?
Well, actually, I coached in the 70s, 76. Started coaching in 76 at Allen High School, Mighty Mustangs. The thing back then, Bill, there wasn't all this jumping around, Florida High School Activity Association kept a handle on it, Kids, in order to play at another school, a kid had to move into the community, which was, that's fine if they wanted to move. I had a few that left Cocoa, went over to Merritt Island. But it's not like it is today. I think kids back then were more dedicated to their school and their communities and their friendships they had, growing up through elementary to middle school and high school.
Right. Funny thing, I gotta tell you, I just got a call, which I politely said we're live on social media. He must have heard you talking because it was Jeff McClain. So I'm not sure if he was curious about what you were going to say about Merritt Island, but I'll have to call him back and let him know. I think he handled it pretty good. So let me ask you, Chris, talk about the transfer portal. Where do you sit with all this? A couple of stats I want to throw out real quick. Anybody interested in anything to do with the NCAA portal? Who's out there? What school has which ones transferred in or out? Go to 247sports.com. You can find anything you want. You can find it by team, by person, by region, by position. You can punch up Michigan State University. Chris is very fond of Florida Gators that we're fond. You can see who went out, who went in, where they're going. And they said that in 8 months already of this year, they've broken the 12-month record, and already there's 2,669 football players in Division I transfer portal. So it's a big thing for sure. What do you think, Chris? Is it, the wild, wild west? Do these kids deserve to play wherever they want to play? Is there any loyalty because the school's paying for their education? I don't know.
It's definitely a slippery slope. I'm a traditionalist. I'm not in favor of, transfer every year just because things aren't working out. I think, my opinion, I think at least got to sit out a year, just like the old rule.
Right.
You got to sit out a year, and that at least puts a little weight on it rather than just jumping ship.
Doug, something I read today, and they may have already happened because something I read said August the 3rd, but Chris is exactly right. Currently, you get one free year. So I can leave University of Florida, go to University of Georgia. Any other swap after that, currently, you have to sit out a year. The NCAA is looking to waive that, which means if they do, and they're supposed to vote this month, you can change all 4 years, play at 4 different schools, 4 different years. Don't even have to worry about graduating. And just like Chris said, if that doesn't open it up, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I think you're right. In this liberal society that we're in, you can bet that's going to happen. I'm an old guy. And I'm kind of like Chris. I'm traditionally, I'd like to see kids stay at their home school. But in college too, if you make that decision to go to the University of Florida, you need to stay there. But it's times are changing. With the U.S. Supreme Court making the decision they did with the athletes being paid, we just got to roll with the punches. I don't see it going back to the traditional ways. I've done a little research on this summer. But as far as the transfer portal, if a kid is not happy at the University of Florida, maybe not getting to play, maybe the coach doesn't like him for some reason or whatever, let him go. Let him go, try another school, maybe be successful. That's the way I look at it now. Of course, I've changed my thinking, but.
And you know what, going back to Chris, and I think Chris is right. It's like anything else. It's like we go from the deep end to the shallow end, or vice versa, in just one jump. I kind of agree with both of you. And like Chris said, do the 1 year. After that, you have parameters. I know when I left the University of Florida and went to UCF, not because of athletics. In order to get into UCF, no matter how many credit hours I needed, every school usually has a minimum of what you have to take. For instance, if I go from Michigan to Michigan State, and I only need 12 more hours, if I'm just a normal student, no athletics involved at all, if they let me in, I'm going to have to finish 30 hours. So I'm like you, Doug. I see a slippery slope that those parameters are going to go away, or they're just not going to worry about it. The one thing that sticks in my mind is just like you guys said, where does the education piece fall into all this, Chris? And I'll ask you that last question. I mean, I don't care if you're going to work in the business world, teaching, whatever it is. The main purpose is to get an education. It's almost like with athletics, especially if the NCAA says, hey, you can go every year without a waiting period. I think that just gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't too long ago. Mike DeGore, one of Brevard County's best, he signed with Florida. Steve Spurrier ends up going to Washington. He redshirts his Spurrier year, gets Ron Zook as a coach, plays for Ron Zook, has a great experience there, has another coaching change.
Right.
I think going into his senior year with Urban Meyer, but if he would have jumped ship because, hey, new coach is coming in, whatever, would he have fit in? Would it have worked? He was 2-time SEC.
Right.
He stuck it out and had a great experience, got to play for 3 quality coaches.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And Doug, you and I know we had a pretty good quarterback a couple of years ago. Kyle Trask stuck it out on the bench, finally got to play as a senior, did the same thing in high school. He played behind the young man that was a quarterback at Miami. And hopefully he's waiting for Brady to retire one day and might get to play at Tampa. But Doug, he's a pretty good example of, like Chris said, a kid just sticking it out.
Oh, yeah, I've been watching that kid on YouTube. Yeah, when you're retired, Bill, you can do anything you want to. So I've been watching YouTube a lot. And, I'm getting fired up for the Gator season. I've been watching Coach Billy speak, and, he's all fired up about it. So, what? One thing I've noticed is what's happening. College is becoming a minor league team for the pros. That bothers me in a way because kids are missing an experience, and I think it's dropped down to the high school level too because kids are jumping ship and there's no loyalty to their community, et cetera, et cetera. Kind of bothers me in a way, but that's what it is. So I gotta roll with the punches, man.
Yeah, and I think like you and I have talked, and Chris said, and we've had these discussions when, I worked at the district, you don't worry about things you can't control. You just, as Chris said,
Right.
You just follow the rules and hope that everybody, goes into that. The only last comment I want to make is where I do think this comes in, and both of you know, from both of you being high school coaches, sometimes you have that kid from, I'll say Cocoa, Florida, going to play, let's say, basketball out in some little school in, let's just say, Utah, doesn't know anybody. Weather's a little bit different. And after a year, all of a sudden, you know what, this ain't working out. I want to come home type thing. So, I can see it working out for there. But with 2,700 kids just in football alone, I don't think they're all leaving because of the weather. So it's going to be interesting to see if the NCAA changes it. So now we've got the infamous name, image, likeness that are known as NIL. And I remember, and Doug, I think it was Galen Hall. One time a young man had played football, grandmother died. I think she was in Georgia. Didn't even have money for a bus ticket. Galen Hall, I think that's who it was, gave him $40. Well, all of a sudden he got slapped with an infraction, because the kid couldn't afford a bus ticket. To me, when I first heard about the NIL, I kind of thought that was the purpose, because a lot of these kids, listen, I don't know about your background. When I went to University of Florida, I would label us as middle class, but I wasn't walking around with a pocket full of money, after I got my loan to pay for school. So, and a lot of these kids, unfortunately, are an even bigger disadvantage. But I thought the process was so that those kids, could enjoy some of the things that other students could enjoy, not because somebody wanted to get rich. My mind, I'm thinking if I was going to school at a FIT playing baseball, I might get a commercial deal with Erdman Toyota, or something like, a local type thing, not knowing it was going to blow up into what it is today. I just told Chris and Doug before we came on live, I just saw about an hour ago that SMU, which I like this, and it's kind of what Texas Tech did. SMU has the other thing that's come out is called a collective. And what these are, it's a bunch of alumni getting together at one university, let's say SMU, and then it's their job, almost like a fundraising arm, maybe like a quarterback club type thing, to go out and get sponsors, get money, and then disperse it properly. So, and again, there's not a lot of laws that govern them. So what SMU did is now they've got enough funding coming in for all 4 years that every basketball player and every football player can get $36,000 a year. Now for football, 85 scholarship players and 20 walk-ons all get the same. Texas Tech did the same thing. I apologize. I think Texas Tech is the one that had 85 and 20. But anyway, Texas Tech, all 100 football players, all 4 years they go to school, get $25,000 a year. I'm okay with that versus a young man that signed with the University of Miami. I'm going to take him at his word. He had no knowledge of this. 3 days later, gets a $9.5 million deal, which that's some pretty quick finagling. I even read today, he turned down $11 million from Florida. Chris, what do you think? Have we opened up a whole nother can of worms with this NIL? Is it out of control? What are your thoughts?
I kind of like that collective idea.
Right.
But the 9 millions is definitely exorbitant. That's going to get out of hand. That's going to cause problems.
Right. Well, and I'm like you. And again, I'm going to trust the young man at what he said. I think he signed on a Friday. Monday, there was word out that he had a $9 million deal. I'm not saying that can't happen over the weekend. I just think that some of those conversations, and Doug, let me know what you think. I think some of those conversations are happening before a student signs.
Yeah, a lot of it is. Doug Cook could run a 4.2, 4.3 40 at school right now. I would say I like that 9 million, baby. Bring it on. So if you got the talent, University of Florida, I believe, was in 2019. Their net profit off just football was $49 million. Now, what are they doing with that? These kids, they have the ability. If it wasn't for the talent of these kids, people aren't going to watch them.
Right.
People are not going to watch. They bring in top talent. They got, the kids deserve something. I'm not sure if they deserve 9 million, but
right.
They deserve something. I mean, I can tell you the kids that I coached at Cocoa, they didn't have anything. Someone didn't have anything, Bill. I would take them home after practice.
Right.
Man, it was sad with some of the situations some of these kids lived in, man. But great kids, and they go out to college. They don't have much money. They don't have much. But I think it's a good thing if they had some money, take the girlfriend to a movie or whatever, or, buy them a new shirt or something, ice cream, or, go to Walmart and get an ice cream sandwich or whatever, Billy. It's good. I see a lot of good in it, but long term, I don't know. It's kind of scary long term.
You know what it makes me think of? I remember reading stories years ago. Some of these people, and it may still happen today, they win these extravagant prizes on game shows, cars, trips, whatever, and they have to turn them down because they don't have enough money to pay the taxes on the stuff that they win. And Chris, I'll go back to you. You know, one thing that boggles my mind is now I'm hearing discussions whether it's going to go to Congress, you know, and just like Doug said, now we got politics getting involved in all this, you know, as far as parameters. And I'm thinking, did nobody think about these parameters before they, you know, decided to throw this out there? You know, Chris, if you had a few parameters to put out there on the NIL, what things come to mind to maybe, like Doug said, I agree with giving some of these young men and women, all sports. I think I saw a gymnast signed in either Auburn or Alabama for $1 million. I'm okay with spreading the wealth, but I don't think it's made to get one person rich. Like SMU and Texas Tech, you give everybody 25 grand. I don't know about you. I can live off of 25 grand when everything else comes free. What do you think about some parameters like that?
Definitely some parameters would probably be a good thing just for those student athletes' well-being. You know,
Right.
put $9 million in the pocket of a young man, woman, student athlete. They may not know quite what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that kind of stuff. And I've been living for 49 years, but I will say this, you know, in the end, right now, there's some money. There's ways to make money right now. So they might as well take advantage of it while they can. Because you said, you know, Congress is starting to get involved.
Right.
And so that young man down in Miami, he may be, he may be one of the few that get to really experience it. But who says he's going to be the next big thing either? He may not start a game at Miami for all we know.
You know, I remember I'm going back to 1978, and I got my first student loan to go to the University of Florida, and it was a whopping $2,500 that covered everything. But I quickly learned that the easiest money to spend is money you don't earn. And I'm going to tell you, by about November, I had to start looking for a part-time job because, man, I'm going out to the mall. Just like Doug said, I'm getting a new shirt at Chess King. You know, I'm buying all kinds of groceries because I didn't work for that money. And again, $2,500, $9 million, totally different. But heck, I was 19 at that time and didn't know what to do with $2,500. So I agree with the both of you all that there's got to be some parameter, some kind of cap, you know, as far as that goes. Doug, any last thoughts?
How about this angle, Billy? How about all the former athletes that played at University of Florida, Florida State, Penn State? Are they going to get any restitution for their playing time? I'm sure that's going to be a lawsuit coming up.
So
that's another topic.
I did hear, yeah, interestingly enough, I heard over the summer that Reggie Bush, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they withheld his Heisman because, you know, he got a big vehicle, he got some payments. And so he was saying, hey, now that it's legal, you know, I should go ahead and get my stuff back. Of course, I'm thinking that means that any marijuana smoking crime for the last 100 years should now be washed away because the laws changed. So I don't quite agree, you know, because it's different time, different parameters. But like you say, Doug, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out there saying, hey, I need to have my slate cleaned because these kids they're getting more than I got in trouble for doing. So
exactly.
It's going to be interesting. So the last subject I want to touch on, and again, Chris is from Michigan, big Michigan State fan. We talk football, basketball all throughout the year. My young friend down there at the bottom of the screen is a Gator fan like I am. We got these big conferences now. And with the Big Ten, we got USC, UCLA coming. SEC, we got Texas, Oklahoma. Of course, the Big 12, you know, in a different mode. They've got UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU, which I'm going to be honest with you, when you take in other sports in addition to football, I think they might even step their game up a little bit with those four taking over Texas, Oklahoma. The Pac-12, teams like Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington, been talking to the Big Ten. I read about ACC. Of course, the big fish is anybody going to land Notre Dame. They're talking to West Virginia, Kansas, Navy. I see the Big Ten, and I'll start with you, Chris. They're getting ready to cut ties with ESPN because now they're going to sign with CBS, NBC, and I think they're cutting $100 million tie, which means to me, what the heck are they getting? So let me ask you first, what do you think about Michigan State and UCLA as a big game in a couple of years?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to enjoy watching the games. There'll be interesting matchups, and that's exciting. I've
True.
always been a regional guy. The Big Ten is Midwest.
Right.
The SEC is Southeastern Conference football. And so Oklahoma, Texas doesn't have the right ring to it. But in the end, on Saturdays, it'll be fun to watch.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I still get confused when I might see North Carolina playing Maryland in basketball and forget it's not a conference game, because with Maryland and Rutgers being in the Big Ten. What do you think, Doug? Do we need to get tickets now for Oklahoma, Florida in a couple of years?
I think we do. One thing we're guaranteed in this life, things are going to change. We know that. And having 4 super conferences with 16 teams, I kind of like that idea. It's a lot more competitive. But we know that, whoever gets the best athletes are going to be on top every year. So that's going to be the challenge of the coaches and recruiting. But I kind of like the idea.
And I think, Chris, you said it right, too. There was something about that regional feel. Even like the ACC. I went up there a couple of years ago with my daughter and her husband and Linda, my wife, and a couple of good friends of ours, and watched, I think it was Virginia, FSU. Those stadiums have like 60,000 people. It's not like, and I know you've been to a Gator game, it's not like 95. But, man, there's just something about that regional small town. And like Doug said, I think that's going away. The Big Ten, I don't think they're going to stop at USC, UCLA. There's other sports. Basketball is going to be some good matchups as well. Any other teams you like out there, Chris? If anybody else was going to join the Big Ten, you licking your chops on a couple other names?
Notre Dame would be interesting.
I mean, how does that not fit?
Yeah.
They play Michigan, they play Michigan State. I think they're holding out for more money.
I remember years ago, I was tailgating at Munn Field, Michigan State on a Saturday, and it was Nebraska was coming to town, and Tom Osborne and that one running back called Lawrence Phillips. I had a bunch of trouble, but they put it on the Spartans that day. And then, a couple of years later, here come the Cornhuskers are coming to the Big Ten. And what's happened?
Right.
I don't know. Competition, it's made everybody better.
Well, that brings up a good point. Can you imagine having your basketball tournament? You got Nebraska against Michigan State. On the other side, you got USC against Michigan, in one basketball. So, Doug, let me ask you. So, I've talked to some people that say they think the NCAA, the schools and the conferences might just get too big and too powerful where they pull away. You got the SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. Do you see that being 5 super conferences and everybody goes back to what you and I and Chris remember as Division I AA? I mean, what do you think this might get to in a couple of years?
I don't know. I think it's all driven by money, number one thing. But I don't see a lot of change in the near future. But I do see teams jumping ship and going to conferences where they can make more money for their program.
Right.
It'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well, and like I said a few minutes ago, I remember when Maryland went to the Big Ten, and I think their payout, was something around 40 or 50 million to the ACC. They wrote that check in a heartbeat because I think from what they were looking to get, I think I saw the Big Ten last year, every school got $100 million because of the TV. I mean, when you just blow off 50 million because of what's coming up, Chris, I think like Doug said, that's a lot of money.
Sure is.
as far as that goes. So it'll be interesting. I think Doug is right. I'm not big on going any more than about 8 for the football playoffs. But if you're going to have these mega conferences, then maybe you cut a game back. Instead of 13 games, they play 12, and then maybe you add 16 teams and add an extra round. But it's going to be interesting. And again, you look at the SEC, when you look at Texas and Oklahoma, I mean, softball, football, basketball. I mean, football, we've got probably 7 or 8 past national champions in just the last 20 years. At the end of the day, I'm like Doug. I might not agree with it, but I'm going to be watching Alabama, Oklahoma on a Saturday at 2:00. So, whatever that happens. So, Chris, any last words? I appreciate you spending a half an hour of your time on first day of school eve. What do you got coming up as far as being on duty first couple of games? That start next week?
Yeah, next week we got the kickoff classic at home. We had a sprinkler issue. We got that repaired over the summer. We're still trying to bring our grass back into game day shape, but we've got a great team there that work really hard to make the facilities look well and ready for game day. One thing we're getting ready for is a volleyball season coming up. We're defending the 7 straight district champions. So this could be 8. We graduated 4 very talented players last year. We still got some talented ones coming back. Lost to the eventual state champion Mosley, which Merritt Island knows very well of.
Right.
And I was kind of looking ahead going, this could be a fun little event if it were to work out that way and playing Merritt Island. So
wow.
Volleyball, we're excited for volleyball this year. Football's got a competitive schedule. Tough year last year. And then going into the winter season, girls basketball's on the rise.
Good.
And so is our girls soccer program. Our softball team has played in 2 Final Fours in the last 4 years. So they've got a lot of girls coming back as well. Wow. But one thing I'm looking forward to is just a safe school year where, the kids feel safe every day and that we don't have any issues like we see going on in the news on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's well said. And we certainly hope that for everybody. So 7A, you got over 2,000 kids. How many kids you got?
We're 5A. We got a little over 1,750.
Okay. All right. So not too bad.
Region 1, which is the Panhandle, and this is different than Brevard. We've got the Panhandle. So Region 1 goes all the way out to Pensacola. That's a 5.5, 6 hour drive. And we went out there a couple of times. Yeah.
When you get into this metro and suburban, that's the difficult part is that travel, even in the middle of the season, you have to do that. So Doug, first time in how many years Satellite High School will not have anybody with the last name Cook attending or working?
It's been a long time. I've been raising kids since I was 26 years old, man. So my last one's out of the house playing volleyball in college. So, I'm enjoying myself a little bit, although I can't go in her bedroom without crying. You know what I mean? Yeah. So my baby girl, but it is hard. It's hard when they leave. Just as a note, that college sports is a $14 billion business. 14 billion. Man, so it's all geared toward money, man. So you got to keep that in mind when we're making our conversations there.
Well, it's funny. I remember Beyond Borg, I think was the first one I remember, started wearing a headband with either Nike or something on it. And that was the first big thing was you got a wristband, a headband, a shirt, you're getting paid thousands of dollars. And now look where we are. So, well, Chris, I appreciate you joining us. Hopefully we'll see you again maybe during the football season. Best of luck to both your kids, one starting her final year, one starting her first year in high school. I certainly wish you and all the people at Ridgeview the best, as you say, on a safe and uneventful, shall we say, maybe exciting school year. Mr. Cook, it's always a pleasure. Hopefully, when I find time for my busy retirement schedule, we'll have to hit that little dimple ball again. But guys, thanks for joining me. I appreciate your input, and we hope to see you again one day on Press Box Overtime.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
See you, Chris.
So that was Doug Cook and Chris Gallagher, 2 good friends of mine, talking about some issues that we're dealing with right now with college sports. name, image, and likeness, talk about the super conferences, the transfer portal. And it's just great to get their input because they're so knowledgeable as far as their coaching backgrounds, etc. I'm very pleased to have them both on here. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, this will be posted on YouTube channel Pressbox Overtime. I'll copy it over to my Facebook group as well. And certainly make any comments. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. And again, to all my Brevard County and all my friends in education, have a great first day tomorrow and a great school.